Hi everybody. Today we're going to be determining the equation of a line given different pieces of information. Before we do that though, let's review some of the essential things we need to know to do today's lesson. So let's review our slope formula. We use the letter M to represent slope because it comes from a French word meaning to climb, which is related to steepness. We generally use rise over run. So on a graph, the rise is the vertical change. So we have 2 points here on my little diagram. So the vertical change between them is from here to here. And the run is the horizontal change from here to here, right? Counting the distance. So don't forget, if a line is going up from left to right like this, it has a positive slope. If a line is going down from left to right like this, it has a negative slope. Now we have arrows on both ends to show that it continues infinitely. What we have here on the graph is called a line segment. It does not continue infinitely. It stops at these 2 points. So that's why we put arrows to show it can keep going for what we're doing. Slope can also be defined as the change in y over the change in x. And don't forget that little symbol delta we use to represent change. All right, it's a Greek letter. We use that mostly when we're talking about the tables. But there's also our slope formula, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And that's the formula. When people generally say the slope formula, that's what they're referring to. The one that we want to use when we're given two sets of points. And we can use that, label them x1, y1, x2, y2 to find our slope. Okay, continuing along, let's talk about our equation of a line. There's different forms of it. The first one, let's remind ourselves, is called slope y-intercept form. Slope y-intercept form. Okay, that's the one that you're probably most used to, y equals mx plus b. All right, so why do we call it slope y-intercept form? Because the m is the slope and the b is the y-intercept. All right, so the y-intercept is a point on your graph. Now, when we refer to the full y-intercept, it's 0, comma b, right? But the b is the number we're talking about here. So let's just go over to our graph and make one up. Let's go to 0, 6. There we go. There's my y-intercept. I'm just going to put a point up there at 0, 6, and I'm going to draw a line here. Okay, so I've drawn a line on a graph. Let's just review really quick the important details of finding the slope. There's my y-intercept there. To find the slope, we need another point. So I see a point right here. I see a point right here. This point's important because this is our x-intercept. So it's not directly available in our equation like our y-intercept, but the x-intercept is when the y-coordinate is 0. What's the x-coordinate, which is 4, because it lands on the x-axis, so that's why we call it the x-intercept, where it intercepts the x-axis, just like the y-intercept. To find slope, remember, we do rise and run. Now we're going to have a negative slope because this line is going down from left to right. If we count here, I'm just going to use these 2 points. Remember, any 2 points can be used, even these 2 here, whatever you want. We went down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps or 6 units. So the rise here would be negative 6 divided by the run, 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 6 over 4, which we can reduce to negative 3 halves, and we're going to leave that a fraction in this unit. So if I was to write the equation of this line that I just drew on the graph, it would be y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 6. There you go. All right, but we talked more about last week how to find the equation algebraically, and that's what we're going to focus again on this week. So how do we find these two numbers without drawing the graph? But it's important that we always remember the graphing part first. All right, what about special lines? Oh, before we move on to that, let's not forget standard form. Standard form is the one that we don't use as much in grade 9, but we just need to be able to get used to getting the equation out of standard form. So it looks like this, where the x plus by plus c equals 0, and a, b, and c just represent numbers. Remember, what we need to do is isolate the y. So how are we going to do that? 2 steps. First, we're going to subtract whatever the ax term is from this side, and then we're going to divide both sides by b to isolate y. And when we do that, we'll get y equals mx plus b. So we'll review some of those today. Special lines. Well, those would be the horizontal and the vertical. So horizontal, vertical. All right, so what makes them noticeable? Well, first of all, slope. This one always has a slope of 0, while the vertical slope is always undefined. And that has to do with where the 0 is. So again, if you're getting a slope of 0, it's because you probably have something like 0 over 10. 0 divided by 10 is no problem, it's 0. But undefined, if you have 10 over 0, where the rise is a number, a non-zero number, but the denominator is 0, that's when you get undefined. Okay? All right, so slope is 0, undefined slope. How do we write the equations for these? For a horizontal line, it's always just y equals b. So what does that mean? Let's go over to our graph here and erase what we have here right now. And let's draw another equation, a horizontal line. Okay, so I'm going to draw a horizontal line here. Let's just draw it through 8. Well, what's b? b is 0, 8. So b is 8, right? That's our y-intercept. b is equal to 8. So for this line here, it would just be y equals 8. Done. How about a vertical line? Same idea, same thinking. It's x equals a. Now what does a represent here? A represents the x-intercept. What is the x-coordinate of the x-intercept? So let's just draw one here. Let's draw, oops, I've lost my line tool here. Let's draw one through, I don't know, -4. Here we go. Okay, I'm a little off. Okay, almost there. Okay, so notice how it's passing through -4, right? That means the x-coordinate is -4. The y-coordinate there is 0. That would be a. a is -4. So in this case, x equals -4. Now, truth be told, with your horizontal line, every point has the y-coordinate being 8. So we could be at -9, 8, -7, 8, -6, 8. I could be over here at 10, 8. They all have the y-coordinate 8. So really, to write the equation of horizontal line, remember, you just need to know what is the y-coordinate of any point on that line. You can do it like that. Done. Same thing with the vertical line. The x-coordinate, no matter where I go, is going to be -4. So -4, -8, or up here at -4, 6. It doesn't matter. The x-coordinate is always -4, -4, -4. So I can just write x equals -4 and write my equation immediately like that. Okay, the final important thing to remind you about here is parallel and perpendicular lines. That's one we haven't talked about in a bit, and you're going to really need that this week. So what do we know about parallel lines? There's just one thing we need to know. Parallel lines have the same slope. So if you know the slope of one line, parallel line, you know the slope of the other. So if someone draws, I'm just going to go really sloppy here, and says, okay, I got the line y equals 2x, I know this is not accurate at all on the graph, plus 6, and you have a parallel line to it, it would also have the same slope, like y equals 2x, except this one's -3. So the y-intercepts can be different. You know, this one passes at -3, this one almost passes at 6. That's different, but the slopes are the same. Again, the graphs I drew do not really match the slopes there. You can go back and watch that lesson where we get a little more technical with it. Perpendicular lines, though, they're different, right? So what was it with perpendicular lines? Perpendicular lines don't have the same slope. They have slopes that are negative reciprocals, okay? So what does that mean? Reciprocal, sorry for the sloppy writing. That means if you have one slope, you take it, you flip it, and you get the other one. So, and change the sign. So for example, if we have 2/3 is our first slope, the perpendicular slope, and we're just going to use this little symbol for perpendicular, and don't forget we can use 2 little slashes next to the slope for parallel, //. So when you see me write this little perpendicular symbol, there we go, it means it's perpendicular. So the perpendicular slope would be flip it and change the sign, -3/2. So again, you can go back and watch that lesson where we get into more detail about all that. All right, so again, perpendicular slopes, one line would be going one way, the other one would be 90 degrees to it. There you go. Okay. All right. So let's move on and do some examples. Okay. To find an equation of any line, let's just remember what we need. We need to find two things. We need to find the slope, m, and the y-intercept, b. Unless, of course, it's our two weirdos, the horizontal and vertical. We got to think a little outside the box. All right. So each of the examples I'm going to do with you today give you a point and give you slope. But we have to do a little bit of work or thinking to figure out just what those are. Okay, so let's start with this first one here. The line has a slope of 2/3, all right, so we know that, and it passes through the origin. Okay, so let's see, what do we actually know? What you want to do is basically start with these two things, m equals and b equals. That's what you're looking for, each question. What are they going to be? All right, well, we know m. They gave it to us. It's 2/3, so great. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to write it in red here. Okay, got my slope. Now, what is the origin? That's the trick in this question. The origin is a point on the graph, and it's the very center of our graph. It's 0, 0. All right, so now, some of you might already realize we already know what b is then at this case. Where does our line pass the y-intercept? Well, let's think about it, right? Where does it cross the y-axis? if it goes through 0, 0, right? Let's just do a little mental sketch in our heads here, right? It doesn't matter what the slope looks like, going up, whatever. That means the b value is 0. Oops, right? B equals 0 because that's where it crosses. So we know automatically b is 0. Now, let's say you didn't realize that. Let's say you totally forgot that's what the b would be. You can still substitute into your equation. So let's go through the steps here, right? We start with y equals mx plus b. Remember how we substitute in the slope, which is 2 over 3. And then we substitute in the point, right? So when we substitute in the point, this is your x coordinate, this is your y coordinate. So 0 equals 2 over 3 times 0 plus b. Well, 2 over 3 times 0 is 0, so that's gone, right? And 0 plus b is just b, and there you go. b equals 0. There you go. So we just proved it that way. So even if we didn't realize right away instinctually what it is, we should end up at the same conclusion either way by subbing in the point. So don't forget, anytime you're given a point, we talked about this in a previous lesson, anytime you're given a point where the x coordinate is 0, only the x, we're not talking about the y is 0, where x is 0, that is the definition of your y-intercept. So that other number is automatically b. So in this case, if this had passed through 0, 5, then b would have been 5. But it's not in this case. All right, so let's write our final equation here. Here we go. Y equals mx plus b. Well, if we sub this in, we get y equals 2 over 3x plus 0. So we drop that plus 0, and our final equation is just y equals 2 over 3. Y equals 2 over 3 times x. There we go. All right, let's check out another one here. Moving on to the next one. Okay, in this next case, we are told that the line we are looking for, the line is what they're saying, is perpendicular to this line and passing through this point. So remember, every question has to give us the slope and a point. So what have they given us so far? They definitely are actually telling us the slope. We might not realize it. The key here is our line is perpendicular to this line. So let's focus on this line here for a second. What is the slope of this line, right? That's its m, that's its b. So its slope is -3, its y-intercept is 0, 1. So we are focusing on the slope of this line. We don't care about the y-intercept, okay? So the slope of that line is -3. What is the perpendicular slope of -3? Well, -3 over 1, right? Because there's the invisible 1. So let's flip it and change the sign. And when we're changing the sign, what we're really doing is multiplying it by a negative, right? So instead of -3 over 1, it's positive 1 over 3. That's the slope we want. That is the perpendicular slope to this line. So in this question, you have to know what perpendicular means. It means you steal its slope. We're going to flip it and change its sign. So I know my slope. I'm going to go put that in my little table here. We got that. Check. So that's step 1. So we are now done with this line. We don't care anything else about this line. We just knew that our line was perpendicular to it and we could steal its slope. So don't worry about that line anymore. All right, now we know our line passes through this point here. So what do? Same thing as usual. We go y equals mx plus b. We're going to sub in the slope, okay, which is 1 over 3 times x plus b. All right, and we're going to substitute in this point. So the x coordinate of this point is 6, and there we go, and the y coordinate is 7. So let's make y 7, and let's make x 6 in this equation. And now we just got to simplify it and find out what b is. All right, so 1/3 times 6. Well, that's 6 over 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. All right, and then we're going to subtract 2 from 7. 7 minus 2, we're going to get b equals 5. I'm just going to flip this around. There you go, b equals 5. All right, so we got our b. So we have everything now that we need to write our equation. So all we do is, again, take y equals mx plus b, sub in m, sub in b. Here's our equation, 1 over 3x plus 5. There you go. Perfect. All right, so this lesson is trying to show you that the slope is given to you. You just have to do some thinking to figure out what it is. So again, every question has to give you the slope and a point, or, like we've seen before also, 2 points. And we can use those 2 points to find slope. All right, let's try another. Okay, this next question says we have a line that's parallel to the y-axis. So to get going here, I drew a little diagram. Okay, so here's our y-axis, right? Our y-axis is the vertical line right here. Okay, so my line is parallel to the y-axis and it's passing through the point -5, 2. So let's go graph that. X is -5, somewhere over here, y is 2, and we're just going to make a rough sketch to kind of think this through mentally. This one's a little trickier because we can't just charge right in, right? it's given us some clues, and they're more descriptive of a graph. So the line is parallel to the y-axis. So what we have here is a vertical line that's parallel to the y-axis. How do I know it's parallel? How do I know it's vertical? Because it's parallel. So there's my line, right? Just like two streets. So the y-axis is vertical, my line is vertical. So these are two vertical lines. So in other words, all this question is really saying is this. It's saying you have a vertical line that passes through this point. Okay, so how do we write the equation of a vertical line? This is where we need to have some facts memorized, our special cases, right? This is a special case. And we don't sub into y equals mx plus b anymore. With the special cases, we just write x or y equals. And in this case, with the vertical line, we write x equals a. What the heck is a? A is where your line crosses the x-axis at. So where would it cross at? In this case, the x-coordinate would be -5, and the y-coordinate would be 0, right? All points on this line have an x-coordinate of -5, no matter what the y-coordinate is. So I don't even have to draw this graph or look at it. All I needed to know was that this is a vertical line. That's piece 1. It's vertical. And I know the x-coordinate of that line. So to write one of these, that's all you have to do. So we just have to write x equals -5. And that's been the case with every vertical line we've been working with for over 2 months now. So hopefully at this point, it's starting to sound a little bit familiar. All right, so again, this one takes a little more thinking, very little work to do. You don't have to always draw these diagrams and things. This is all you really need to come up with, is that. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, my next one says my line is parallel to this line here. So let's start with that. They're telling me we're parallel. So what do we know about parallel lines? Parallel lines have the same slopes. So we know our line has the same slope as that. They also gave us a point, which we can use in a little bit. All right, so my line has the same slope as this line, but I got to figure out what the slope of this line is. The problem is it's in standard form. So we need to convert this out of standard form. So this is a good time to review how to do that. So 2x plus 4y plus 7 equals 0. To put it into out of standard form and into slope y-intercept form, all we have to do is isolate the y. So first, we're going to get this alone by getting rid of 2x from this side and getting rid of 7 from this side. So what's that going to look like? It's going to look like this. 4y equals -2x and -7. We subtracted 2x and 7 from both sides. Now, we want to get the y isolated. How are we going to do that? By dividing both sides by the coefficient of y. All right, now these are going to cancel. All that's left on this side is y. -2/4, we can reduce that and just make that -1/2 x, and -7/4, can't reduce that. So there you go. Now, the key was parallel, same slope. The slope of this line is -1/2, so the slope of my line is -1/2. So I'm going to get my little chart going up here. We now know what m is. It's -1/2. Now, if you're wondering why didn't I make a chart in the last question, that was a special case, right? Every time we run into those special cases, I just drop all the usual rules and I figure out if it's horizontal or vertical, and I write y equals or x equals. All right, so now we've got that. Now, we don't care about anything else here. We don't care about this. We don't care about anything. All we cared about is parallels have the same slope, so we can steal his slope. All right, now, let's move on with the usual business. The next thing we're going to do is we need to figure out what b is. So to figure out what b is, they gave us a point, they gave us slope. So let's start with y equals mx plus b. Let's substitute in our slope, which is -1/2, which is the same as the other line's slope. And we're going to sub in this point, x and y. Use our old method. Every time we have slope and a point, we sub in the slope, we sub in the point, just like we did in last week's lessons. And we solve for b. So this is a really important common skill you're going to need. All right, so -1/2 times 3, well, that gives me -3/2. We're going to have to get rid of that from the side by adding it to both sides, so 2 plus 3/2. And we're going to have to get a common denominator, 2/1. That's pretty easy. We can multiply the numerator and denominator by 2 and raise it up to 4/2 plus 3/2. And I'm running out of room here. I'm just going to bring it up here. b equals 7/2. All right, so we got b. So we did everything we needed. So we can write our equation now. Y equals -1/2 x plus 7/2. All right, so again, why did I do this question? It's more of reminding you of parallel lines have the same slope. And don't forget, perpendicular lines have negative reciprocals. That's the first clue. The second clue is they gave you an equation in standard form. You need to rearrange that to find the slope. And then after that, everything's business as usual. Sub in the slope, sub in the point. All right, let's check out another one. Okay, next example, we got another perpendicular line. So remember, with perpendicular lines, our slopes are negative reciprocals, but we got something else weird going on here. Our line is perpendicular to y equals 7. So what type of line is y equals 7? This is one of our special cases. How can I tell? Because remember, most lines have y equals mx plus b. But if it's just y equals a number or x equals a number, right, with no other variable in it, those are our two special cases. All right, so let's kind of review. What do we have here? All right. So our special cases. Let's see what we remember about them. These are facts we really want to memorize going into grade 10. All right, so all horizontal lines. What do we know about horizontal? All horizontal lines, like we started at the intro, have a slope of 0. And how do you write the equation? Y equals b. What about vertical lines? All vertical lines have slopes that are undefined. I'm just going to write undef for now. And x equals a. Well, we have just a y here, which means what we have right now, y equals 7, is a horizontal line. So let's just draw a quick sketch here again to think it out. And I tend to find, even at my age, doing math a long time, drawing a sketch makes sense of these things. And it's not just something to do to help you, it's what this is all about. That's what's going on. All right, so let's draw the line y equals 7. I'll just draw it in purple here, just a rough sketch. There it is. I know it's horizontal, and I know it passes through 0, 7, because that's what b is. All right, so there's the line y equals 7. Now they're saying you have a perpendicular line. Well, what's perpendicular to a horizontal line? It's a vertical line. So our line for this question must be vertical. And it passes through the point 8, 14. So let's think, well, where's 8, 14? 8 over 14 down. Again, we're just kind of roughing it. About 8, negative 14 there. So your line is vertical. Here we go. Let's just get the tools out here and draw that vertical line. There it is. So how do we write a vertical line? It's just x equals. So what's it going to be? X equals what? Well, where is a here, right? Remember, this is b. A is the x coordinate where it crosses the line here. Well, the y coordinate would be 0. What's the x coordinate? It's the same for every point on this line. So we didn't even have to draw this diagram. It's just 8. That's the equation. Done. So our final answer is just x equals 8 because it's a vertical line. All vertical lines, we write x equals, and we just write the x coordinate of what we saw. So if we figured that out already in our heads without drawing the picture, we could skip all the work and just go, oh, it's a vertical line. I know it for sure because that's what's perpendicular to a horizontal line. How do I write a vertical line? Just write x equals the x coordinate. And there you go. All right, one more and we'll wrap it up here. Okay, so we got one more. It starts out by telling us we have a slope of 7. So I know this is not a special case because it doesn't say the slope is 0 or the slope's undefined, anything weird like that. So we know m, we just got to figure out what b is. M is negative 7. All right, they also tell us the coordinates of the x-intercept. Now, some of you are going to be jumping to go, oh, it's 6. Great, that means b is 6. But that is incorrect. That's the y-intercept. So they gave us the x-intercept. What are those coordinates? The x-intercept is 6, which means the x-coordinate of the x-intercept is 6. The y-coordinate is 0. That's your x-intercept. So what are we going to do here? We don't have the y-intercept. We have the x-intercept. What everyone forgets is the x-intercept is a point, right? What do we need to find the equation? Slope, check, and a point. Check. We have those two things. So what are we going to do? All we're going to do is substitute into y equals mx plus b. Substitute in the slope. Slope is negative 7. Substitute in the point we're given. We're going to replace the x coordinate, the x variable, with the x coordinate, which is 6, and the y coordinate is 0. All right, so what's negative 7 times 6? That's negative 42. And we're just going to have to add 42 to both sides to get it off of this side. And we have 42 equals b. There you go. That's what b is. And there you go. Let's write our equation. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals negative 7x plus 42. So a pretty easy question. But again, something we might have to stop and think for a bit. As soon as people see that x-intercept, they kind of stop and freeze and don't know where to go. There's no trick to it. It's just a point. So just sub it in and solve. All right. Try these questions out. They're very similar to the ones you're going to try today as the video, so watch the video through a couple times if you need to. Everything you should be able to follow step by step. Just recognize that the questions I'm giving you are just like the ones you're watching here, okay? Thanks.